Hi, my name's Jason Rowe. I'm a freelance travel photographer and writer and video creator for Photosy.com and for Lightstalking.com. In this brief video, I'm going to have a look at two really excellent Photoshop sharpening techniques that go way beyond the sort of standard sharpen and unsharp mask and give you a much better control over how sharp your image should be. We're going to use this image here of the cruise ship against a massive Antarctic iceberg. It's a RAW file and I've removed any sharpening that was applied to it in Lightroom and brought it over directly into Photoshop. So it has the corrections from Lightroom, but it has no sharpening. And we're going to go through two techniques. The first is lab color sharpening and the second is high pass sharpening. Both are really quite simple to do, but very effective and can really give you a much sharper image, particularly useful if you're printing your images large for print, going out on a large format print. It's important to note that you should never do any sharpening until you've completely finished the editing on the image. You need to get everything right on the image, the contrast, the selective masking, everything you need to do needs to be done first. The sharpening is the last thing you do before you output that image to wherever it's going, be it the web or be it, for print. So with that said, let's get into it and let's start with lab sharpening. So the first thing we actually need to do is we need to convert this image from RGB into a lab color image. And to do that, we're going to go to the Photoshop menu, image mode, and you can see here lab color. So we'll click on that. Now what you'll see is on the right hand side, we've got the mode in lab color, we've got layers, channels and paths. If we click on the channels, you can now see that we have lab and lightness and two sub-layers underneath. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the lightness channel here and you can instantly see that it goes black and white. Now don't worry about that, it will return to colour at the end of the process. So the turning to black and white is just part of the actual process. Now we go to the filter and we go to sharpen and we go to Unsharp Mask. And our Unsharp Mask will pop up. Now drag your image so that you've got a point where you can actually got some good contrast and see how well you're sharpening up. This is pretty good here. We've got some writing on the ship and we've got some detail on the edge of the ship against the iceberg there. So that looks great. Now what we're trying to do is increase the sharpness by using the amount, but also balancing it by using radius and threshold. Now increasing the amount will work a lot less than if you were in standard RGB mode. However, you still need to be relatively careful with it. We're going to bring that up so it looks pretty good. There's no artifacting around the image, but it does look very sharp. Then we're going to just control the radius. Between 1 and 2 works fine. Just to soften off and back off, we'll go for 1.5 here. And then we're going to set a threshold of between 1 and 3. So we'll go for 2 there. That looks pretty good. And you can see at 100% it looks pretty sharp. And at 200% it also looks sharp. If we click the preview off, there is a definite slight sharpening there, but nowhere near as much as if you'd done an unsharp mask in RGB mode. And that's the point. We're actually only affecting the lightness channel and we'll merge those back together when we convert it back to RGB. So you'll get a lovely looking sharpened image, but without any of the artifacting. So that looks pretty good. You can play around with these values. See if we slide that all the way to the right, we do get quite a bit of artifacting there. So we just bring that back off until we're happy that there's no artifacting at 200% there, and that looks great. We click OK. We now go back to image mode RGB color and we have our sharpened image. And if we zoom in here, you can see we've got a nice sharp image, significantly sharper than it was before, and yet it's not over sharpened. We've got lots of detail still in the image and it all looks very nice. So that's the lab sharpen one. I'm going to close this down. I won't save that. And I'm going to reopen a image from Lightroom once again. So if we edit in Photoshop, so we're working on a fresh copy. And now we'll have a look at the high pass sharpening technique. This is a little bit more complicated, not excessively so, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the layers down here and we're going to duplicate this layer. So we right click on the original layer and select duplicate layer. We'll just keep the name as background copy. It's if you want to be a little bit more correct, you can give it your own titles, but for the moment we'll just use background copy. Now we need to make sure that we are selecting the upper of the two layers. So we're selecting background copy. And we need to select the opacity from normal to overlay. So we scroll down here and we've got overlay. Now you can see there's a very sort of hard graphic look to the image now. Don't worry about that. Again, like in the previous sharpening, this is all just part of the process. So now from filters, we go up to filters at the top. We go filters, other, which is down the bottom here, high pass. And now what you'll see in this window, if we just zoom out, is almost like an embossed version of our image. Now, if I slide the radius all the way to the left, you can see we lose all the definition. And if I slide it all the way to the right, we get full definition. So we'll slide that back to the middle for the moment. Now, a good starting point is around about 2 to 3 pixels. So if we come for about 2.5 pixels, you can see all these lines here. These are the lines that are going to be sharpened. So what effectively high pass sharpening does is it sharpens the areas of contrast rather than the whole image, which is really what you want. It means that you're not going to put noise into the sky or into the areas of shadow because you're not sharpening them. There's no high defined contrast there. And you can see on this image, if I scroll around to the top of the sky here, the sky is completely blank. There's no detail in that, so it's not being sharpened. So I can bring this sharpening up a little bit, just to about there. I think there's still nothing showing in the sky, so we're not going to get any extra noise in the sky from sharpening, and we've got loads of detail here, and we're going to click OK. Now looking at this, it does actually, I would suggest, look slightly over sharpened. Now you can actually correct that one of two ways. You can actually back off the opacity of the duplicate layer like this until you come back and you're happy with the sharpness. Let's just zoom in a little bit. And so if we back off the opacity, if I put it all the way up there, you can see it's really, really sharp, perhaps a little bit too sharp. And if I just back that off a little bit, it looks good. The other way we can do it is we can slide the opacity all the way back up, and we can change the overlay to either soft light or hard light. Each will have a slightly different effect on the sharpness of the image. Hard light is a slightly harder looking sharpness, and soft light is a slightly softer. And again, we can also go back to control it a little bit from the opacity. I think soft light for this particular image is best, and we can back it off on the opacity, say down to about 80% there, and I think that looks really, really good. If we just scroll around the image a little bit, you can see plenty of detail, plenty of sharpness, no noise in the sky, which is great, and that's exactly what we're looking for. So we'll go back to the full screen there, and that looks really great. So that's the end of this little tutorial. It's two very simple but really, really effective techniques for sharpening your image using Photoshop. You can, of course, sharpen in Lightroom, but you don't have as much control as you do using these two techniques. Well worth practicing, very simple. It takes just a couple of minutes to do each one, and you get so much more control over them. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, it would be great to have a thumbs up, and even better to have a subscription. If you've got any suggestions on Photoshop techniques or Lightroom techniques that you would like to learn, particularly based around the field of travel photography, which is my speciality, then let me know in the comments below, and I'd be happy to see what I can do for you. So that's me done. I'd be glad to have you along for the trip, and I'll see you in the next video.